Welcome to Puzzle Proof. Join us as we unravel today's captivating story and solve exciting puzzles together. Get ready to engage your mind. Let the journey start. Chapter 1. Arrival at Whispering Manor. The late autumn rain fell steadily over the English countryside, turning the narrow country lanes into glistening ribbons of wet stone. Inside the compartment of a slow-moving train, Hercule Poirot sat quietly, his small, neat hands folded delicately upon his lap. His sharp eyes studied the drops of rain tracing delicate paths down the window-pane, his mind working steadily, as ever, at the edges of his thoughts. He held in one hand a crisply folded letter, the creamy paper still smelling faintly of lavender. It was an invitation, an unusual one that had summoned him here, to the remote Whispering Manor. The letter bore the elegant signature of Sir Reginald Fairfax, a man of considerable wealth and influence, who claimed to require Poirot's unique talents to unravel a matter both delicate and troubling. Poirot's moustache twitched ever so slightly. His little grey cells were already beginning to stir. Mon Dieu, what secrets might hide beneath the surface of this quaint estate? And what of these whispers they speak of? It is not simply a question of sound, but of meaning. The train soon pulled into the station of Brampton-on-the-Wold, a sleepy village where the rain had softened to a gentle drizzle. Poirot stepped out with his characteristic grace, umbrella held firmly, and made his way to the waiting carriage. The air was crisp, tinged with the earthy scent of damp leaves and wood smoke. The carriage jolted along the winding road, passing fields bordered by hedgerows, bursting with the colours of late autumn. It was not long before the towering silhouette of Whispering Manor appeared through the mist, a grand, imposing structure of stone and ivy, with tall windows glinting faintly under the grey skies. At the door, Poirot was met by Mrs. Penelope Grey, the housekeeper, a woman of formidable presence. Her expression was tight with worry, and she curtsied with practised precision. "Monsieur Poirot, it is a great honour to welcome you," she said, her voice low though firm. "The household is unsettled. Strange things, they say. Footsteps when no one walks, whispers in empty rooms. We are all quite on edge. Madame, I assure you I shall do my best to bring light where there is darkness. Please lead the way." Poirot's voice was calm, imbued with the quiet confidence that had solved so many mysteries before. Inside, the manor was a study in contrasts, ornate yet sombre, with heavy curtains drawn against the gloomy day. Dark wood panels lined the walls, and antique portraits gazed down from their gilded frames, as though watching the unfolding drama. Sir Reginald Fairfax awaited in the drawing-room, standing beside a tall window. He was a man of stern bearing, with salt-and-pepper hair, and eyes that seemed perpetually troubled. "Ah, Monsieur Poirot," he said, with a nod, "thank you for coming on such short notice." Poirot inclined his head politely. "The pleasure is mine, Sir Reginald. Pray, tell me what has disturbed this fine household." Sir Reginald sighed deeply. "It began several weeks ago. At first, there were noises, footsteps echoing in the corridors when no one was there. Whispers, faint but distinct, carrying words of warning or threat. Some here speak of ghosts, but I do not believe in such things. Yet, the fear is very real." "And who are the members of your household, monsieur?" Poirot asked. "Very well. There is my niece, Miss Eleanor Fairfax, recently returned from London. She is charming but reserved and has been quite shaken. James, our butler, a man of impeccable service, but increasingly nervous. Mr. Blake, the gardener, a straightforward man with a fiery temper, and Miss Lydia Carter, the new governess, quiet and somewhat mysterious." Poirot nodded thoughtfully, absorbing each name. "I shall wish to meet them all soon, but first tell me, have any incidents occurred beyond these noises? Any theft, threats, or strange visitors? Sir Reginald shook his head. Nothing overt, but the tension grows. It is as if the house itself holds its breath. At that moment, the door opened, and Eleanor entered. She was a young woman of graceful stature, her dark eyes bright, but shadowed with unease. "Uncle," she said softly, "I trust Monsieur Poirot will help us understand what is happening." "Indeed, mademoiselle," Poirot replied with a gentle smile. "Sometimes the most frightening mysteries have the simplest explanations, but it requires patience and the discipline to notice what others overlook." Eleanor gave a faint, grateful nod. "I am at your disposal." As the evening shadows lengthened, Poirot made his observations with care. The Manor's every creak and sigh seemed amplified in the silence, and yet Poirot's calm presence brought a reassuring steadiness. After supper, Poirot requested to see the rooms where the noises had been heard. The household staff complied, guiding him through long, dim corridors lined with heavy carpets and antique furnishings. He paused frequently, his gaze sharp, his ears alert. In the grand hall he noticed something peculiar, a faint smell of lavender, delicate but persistent, though no one present wore such a scent. In Eleanor's sitting room, a book lay open on the floor, as if hastily dropped. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Curious," he murmured. Later, in the servants' quarters, Poirot detected tension among the staff. The gardener, Mr. Blake, avoided his questions with a forced laugh. The butler, James, fidgeted nervously when asked about the night's locks and windows. Returning to the drawing room, Poirot lit a small candle and took a seat. "Mes amis," he said softly, "there is more to these whispers than mere superstition. The human mind is capable of great fear, but also great cunning. We shall uncover the truth in time." That night, as the Manor settled into uneasy quiet, Poirot lay awake, listening. And then, faintly at first, he heard it, a whisper, drifting through the corridors like a ghostly breath. "Beware the past." The little grey cells were already hard at work. Chapter 2. The First Night's Whispers. The Manor settled into an uneasy silence as dusk deepened into night. Outside, the rain had softened to a gentle drizzle, leaving a lingering dampness in the air. Inside Whispering Manor, the flickering flames of the grand fireplace cast shifting shadows that danced on the richly patterned wallpaper. The heavy oak furniture, polished to a soft sheen, stood as silent witnesses to the unease that gripped the household. Hercule Poirot sat comfortably in an armchair near the fire, his legs crossed and fingers steepled beneath his perfectly groomed moustache. His eyes were bright and alert, taking in every detail. The tense set of Eleanor's jaw, the nervous twitch in James's hands as he poured tea, the way Lydia's gaze flitted toward the window when she thought no one was looking. "Tell me, mademoiselle," Poirot began gently, addressing Eleanor. "Have you yourself heard these whispers, these footsteps?" Eleanor hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yes, Monsieur Poirot. Last night I was reading in my room when I thought I heard someone moving in the corridor outside, but when I opened the door there was nothing, only the faintest sound of whispering just beyond hearing." Poirot's fingers tapped lightly on the arm of his chair. "And yet, no one was seen?" "No one," Eleanor confirmed. James, the butler, cleared his throat. "If I may, Monsieur Poirot, I have taken great care to ensure the Manor is secure. All doors and windows are locked each night. I have even double-checked." Poirot raised a delicate eyebrow. "And yet, the garden gate was found open this morning." A flicker of surprise passed over James's face. I cannot explain that." The governess, Lydia Carter, who had been silent until now, spoke softly. "I have heard nothing myself, but I confess the stories have unsettled me." Poirot's gaze rested thoughtfully on her. "Madame, do you come from the countryside?" "From a small village, yes," Lydia replied. "But Whispering Manor is unlike any place I have known." "Indeed," said Poirot, nodding. "Very well, we must remain vigilant. Fear, after all, can cause the mind to hear what is not there, but equally it can mask true danger." As the evening wore on, Poirot made a quiet inspection of the rooms where the sounds were reported. Eleanor's chamber was neat and tidy, but Poirot noticed the faint imprint of a footprint in the dust on the windowsill, a small but telling detail. In the corridor outside, he found a thread of fine silk caught on the corner of a banister. Poirot carefully collected it in a handkerchief. "Curious," he murmured. Later, when the household retired, Poirot requested that the staff keep him informed of any further disturbances. "It is, after all, a question of patience and observation," he reminded them. Night deepened. The manor, with its ancient stones and twisting passages, seemed to breathe with a life of its own. Poirot lay awake, listening to the steady rhythm of rain on the roof and the distant hoot of an owl. Suddenly, a faint sound caught his ear, a soft creak from the corridor outside his room. He sat up, his senses alert. There it was again, a whisper barely audible as if carried on a breath of air. "Beware the past." The words were indistinct but unmistakable. Poirot's heart beat steadily, but his mind raced. What past, and who wished to warn or threaten? The next morning, the manor was heavy with tension. Eleanor looked pale, and the staff exchanged wary glances. Poirot took his breakfast quietly, his gaze scanning the room. "Tell me, James, has anything been moved or taken from this house recently? Anything unusual?" "No, monsieur," James replied. "Only the usual affairs." "And Miss Eleanor, have you noticed anyone behaving strangely? Anyone new to the house or visitors at odd hours?" Eleanor shook her head. "Only the gardener, Mr. Blake, but he has always been somewhat reserved." Poirot smiled faintly. Reserved men often hide the most. Later, Poirot asked to walk the grounds with Mr. Blake. The gardener was a tall, ruddy man, his hands rough from years of toil. He seemed uneasy under Poirot's steady gaze. "Tell me, Mr. Blake, do you know anything of Sir Reginald's past dealings? Any enemies, perhaps?" Blake grunted. "There was Charles Wentworth, a partner once, not the best of friends by the end, if you ask me. But he's dead now. Nobody bothers with old ghosts." "Ah," said Poirot, "but ghosts have a habit of haunting the living, no?" Blake gave a sour smile, but said no more. Walking near an ancient oak tree, Poirot noticed the earth had been recently disturbed, the soil loose and uneven. "A rabbit's work?" he asked lightly. Blake shrugged. "Could be." Poirot's gaze sharpened. Or could it be something else? Something hidden? Back inside, Poirot requested to see Lydia's room. It was simple but neat, a faint scent of lavender in the air, an aroma Poirot recalled from the drawing room the night before. "Madame," he said to Lydia, "this scent, lavender, it is yours, yes?" Lydia nodded, a hint of surprise in her eyes. "Yes, monsieur." "Curious. I smelled it faintly in the corridor last night, where the whispers were heard." Lydia's cheeks coloured slightly. Perhaps the wind carried it. Poirot made no reply, merely noting this as another thread in the tapestry. That evening, Poirot gathered the household once more in the drawing room. The fire burned brightly, casting warm light and deep shadows. He addressed them all with calm authority. "Mes amis, the events of this house are not mere coincidence. The footstep, the whispers, these are deliberate acts designed to unsettle and divide, but who benefits from such fear?" He paused, letting the question hang in the air. Sir Reginald's eyes were troubled. Eleanor seemed anxious, yet attentive. James looked tense, while Lydia remained composed but watchful. Mr. Blake stood silently by the doorway. Poirot smiled gently. "We shall discover the truth, but it will require patience and the use of the little grey cells. The past has its secrets, and those secrets, I believe, are stirring once more." As the night drew on, Poirot prepared to keep his vigil. With a small candle and a notebook, he settled into a chair near the corridor's entrance. The house breathed quietly around him. Hours passed in silence until, once again, the whisper came, soft, chilling, unmistakable. "Beware the past." Poirot's eyes gleamed in the candlelight. The mystery was only just beginning. Chapter 3. Secrets in the Garden. The morning sun struggled to break through heavy, low-hanging clouds as Hercule Poirot made his way into the gardens of Whispering Manor. The air was cool and damp with the lingering mist of early dawn, and the earth beneath his polished shoes was soft and uneven. Around him, the great estate spread out, a carefully cultivated patchwork of flower beds, winding paths and ancient trees that seemed to guard the manor's secrets with silent patience. Poirot was accompanied by Mr. Blake, the gardener. The man's large frame and rough hands bespoke years of outdoor toil, yet his eyes flickered with a restless energy that intrigued the detective. "Mr. Blake?" Poirot began, his voice courteous yet firm. "I find the garden to be quite an interesting place. It is often where people hide things, both physical and metaphorical." Blake grunted in response. "I've tended these grounds for 20 years, Monsieur Poirot. Nothing escapes my notice." Poirot smiled politely. "Ah, but sometimes the most observant may overlook what they wish not to see." They walked slowly along a gravel path that curved beneath a canopy of ancient oaks. The scent of damp earth and decaying leaves filled the air. "Tell me, Mr. Blake," Poirot said, "you mentioned the late Mr. Charles Wentworth. What was the nature of his relationship with Sir Reginald Fairfax?" Blake's eyes narrowed slightly and his voice took on a rougher edge. "They were partners once, in business and in ambition. But greed and jealousy drove a wedge between them. There were threats, angry words, things that don't belong in polite conversation. And yet Mr. Wentworth died suddenly, did he not?" Blake's jaw tightened. "Yes. Some say it was an accident, others say less than that. The truth, I reckon, lies buried deeper than anyone cares to admit." Poirot's gaze lingered on a patch of freshly disturbed soil beneath a mighty oak. The earth was soft and recently turned, the kind of detail one might dismiss as a mole's work or a careless gardener's errand. Yet Poirot saw more. "Would you say this earth was disturbed recently?" he asked, crouching to examine the soil closely. Blake shrugged, a faint frown creasing his brow. Could be the rabbit holes, or I might have dug there last week." "Why?" "Curious," Poirot murmured. "Such a place might hide secrets, perhaps something hidden or even buried." Blake's eyes flicked toward the manor, then back to the ground. "I suppose only the one who disturbed it knows." Poirot rose and continued down the path, eyes sharp for anything unusual. He noticed a small scrap of fabric caught on a thorn bush, a delicate piece of lace, not quite matching the rugged garden surroundings. "Have you seen this before?" Poirot inquired, holding it up. Blake shook his head. "No, monsieur, not around here." Poirot pocketed the scrap carefully, noting it alongside the thread of silk he had found in the hall. As they returned to the house, Poirot's mind was already weaving the threads, the whispers, the disturbances, the fragments of fabric. All were clues in a puzzle that extended beyond mere ghostly tales. Back inside, the manor seemed quieter, but no less tense. Poirot asked to speak with Lydia Carter, the governess, privately. Lydia awaited him in a small sitting room near the servants' quarters. She appeared composed, her pale hands folded neatly in her lap. Yet Poirot detected a flicker of unease in her eyes when he mentioned the garden. "Miss Carter," Poirot began gently, "you arrived only recently at Whispering Manor. May I ask about your past, if it is not too personal?" Lydia hesitated, then nodded. "I come from a small village in the north. My family has been governesses and tutors for generations, though recently I have sought new opportunities." "Have you ever been involved in any matters of conflict or danger?" Poirot pressed, watching her carefully. "No," she replied softly, "but I have heard troubling stories about the Fairfax family, particularly regarding Mr. Wentworth." "And what stories are these?" Poirot's voice was steady. Lydia looked away briefly, then met his gaze. "That Wentworth's death was no accident. That dark dealings, debts and threats haunted the family even before his passing." Poirot nodded slowly. "These whispers, they have roots in the past." Lydia's voice lowered. "Yes, and some say the past is not yet done with Whispering Manor." The detective's thoughts returned to the garden and the freshly disturbed earth. Was something buried there, perhaps evidence? Or a secret? Later that afternoon, Poirot inspected the library where Sir Reginald often retreated. The room smelled faintly of old leather and paper. As Poirot ran his fingers along the spines of the books, he discovered a small hidden compartment in the back of a cabinet. Inside lay a bundle of old letters tied with a faded ribbon. Carefully, Poirot untied the bundle and began to read. The letters were correspondence between Sir Reginald and Charles Wentworth, written during their business partnership. The tone shifted from friendship to bitterness, the words laced with accusation and despair. One letter was particularly revealing. "Reginald, your betrayal cuts deeper than you know. If debts remain unpaid, I shall see to it that your reputation and your fortune are destroyed." Poirot's fingers tightened around the paper. The threat was clear. Returning the letters to their hiding place, Poirot considered the implications. The strained relationship, the sudden death, the threats. This was no mere coincidence. That evening the household gathered for dinner. Poirot observed the subtle glances exchanged, the curt responses, the undercurrent of suspicion. Eleanor seemed withdrawn, her eyes shadowed with worry. James was polite but guarded, and Lydia maintained her calm exterior. Poirot decided it was time to delve deeper. After dinner, he approached Sir Reginald. "Sir Reginald," Poirot said softly, "these letters speak of grave troubles. Have you shared their contents with anyone else in the house?" Sir Reginald's face tightened. "No one but you, Monsieur Poirot. I feared it would only increase the anxiety here." "And yet," Poirot replied, "secrets have a way of emerging, even when hidden." "Indeed," Sir Reginald sighed. "The past casts a long shadow over this place." That night, Poirot sat once more by the fire, contemplating the tangled web of relationships and secrets. The manor itself seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for the truth to come to light. As he prepared for another night's vigil, Poirot's thoughts were clear. The mystery was no longer merely of whispers and footsteps, but of human fear, greed, and betrayal, secrets buried in the earth and perhaps soon to be unearthed. Chapter 4. Shadows of the Past. The morning dawned cold and misty over Whispering Manor, the pale light filtering weakly through the heavy curtains. Poirot awoke with a sense of purpose, the events of the previous days already weaving together in his mind like threads in a tapestry. He dressed with his usual fastidious care, adjusting his cravat with precise fingers before descending to the breakfast room where the household was beginning to gather. Sir Reginald was already seated, his face etched with worry beneath his thick brows. Eleanor, pale but resolute, sat near him, and James moved quietly among them, pouring tea and attending to small details with the efficiency of a man accustomed to control. Lydia Carter, serene yet watchful, joined the group shortly after, her presence like a calm breeze amid the storm. Poirot greeted them all politely before focusing on Sir Reginald. "Monsieur, last night I was reviewing the letters found in your library. They tell a story of conflict, of betrayal, threat, and fear. Would you be willing to speak further about your history with Mr. Wentworth?" Sir Reginald sighed deeply, the weight of old regrets evident in his eyes. "It is a painful chapter, Monsieur Poirot. Charles Wentworth and I were once partners, as you know. We built a business empire, but it was not enough to satisfy his ambition. Over time, distrust grew, and threats were exchanged. I confess our parting was far from amicable. And after his death," Poirot pressed gently. "Suspicion fell on me naturally," Sir Reginald admitted. Though there was no evidence, rumours spread like wildfire. The family's reputation suffered, and even now some in this village whisper of foul play. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. "These whispers may indeed have substance, but we must not be misled by them." Eleanor, who had been silent until now, spoke softly. "Uncle, I have heard more than whispers. At times I feel eyes upon me, even when no one is near. I fear there are secrets in this house, secrets that do not wish to be uncovered." Poirot's gaze softened. "Mademoiselle, fear is a powerful force. It can cloud the mind, but it can also point us towards truth." After breakfast, Poirot requested a tour of the Manor's oldest parts. Led by Mrs. Gray, the housekeeper, he examined corridors and rooms steeped in history, where faded tapestries and worn floorboards whispered of days long gone. In one such chamber, a small, locked cabinet caught Poirot's attention. The wood was polished, but bore the faintest scratch marks near the lock. "May I?" he asked Mrs. Gray, who nodded. With a careful touch, Poirot produced a slender tool from his pocket, a lockpick of exquisite craftsmanship. In moments, the cabinet clicked open, revealing a collection of old documents and photographs. Among them was a faded portrait of a young woman with haunting eyes, labelled simply Isabel Fairfax. Poirot studied it closely. "Who was she?" Mrs. Gray replied in a hushed tone. "She was Sir Reginald's sister, died many years ago under tragic circumstances." Poirot's interest deepened. "Tragic? How?" "She disappeared one winter, and her body was never found. Some say she ran away, others say she was taken. The family has always kept the matter private." Poirot's mind raced. Could Isabel's story be connected to the present unrest? Later, Poirot convened a meeting with the key members of the household. His voice was calm, yet carried the weight of authority. "Mes amis, the past holds many shadows, but it is through understanding these shadows that we find the light. Isabel Fairfax's disappearance is a mystery that has lingered for years. Might it be that someone wishes to remind this family of secrets better left buried?" Sir Reginald's eyes darkened. "You suggest that my sister's fate is linked to the current disturbances?" "Possibly," Poirot answered. "Fear and guilt have long memories. Sometimes those memories manifest in strange ways. Footsteps, whispers, and threats. They may be attempts to unnerve, to distract, or to provoke confession." Eleanor looked troubled. "But who would do such a thing?" Poirot's gaze swept the room, measuring each face carefully. "That, mademoiselle, is the question we shall answer. That afternoon, Poirot requested to see the family's private papers and diaries. He spent hours poring over brittle pages, noting references to Isabelle and to tensions within the family. One diary entry, dated shortly before Isabelle's disappearance, caught his attention. "There are secrets here that must never see the light. If only Reginald understood the price of silence." Poirot's brow furrowed. Who wrote this? What secrets had Isabelle known? Meanwhile, outside in the garden, Mr. Blake continued his work with an unusual fervour. Poirot watched him from a distance, noting the gardener's furtive glances toward the house. Something weighed on Blake's mind, though he kept his counsel. In the evening, Poirot invited Lydia Carter to accompany him for a walk through the garden. As they strolled beneath the leafless trees, the detective spoke gently. "Miss Carter, your arrival here is recent, and yet you seem well acquainted with the family's history." Lydia sighed. "I have studied the Fairfax family as part of my duties. Their history is complicated, full of pride, sorrow, and, as you have discovered, mystery." "Do you trust the members of this household?" Poirot asked, his eyes fixed on the mist swirling around their feet. She hesitated. Trust is a fragile thing here. Everyone guards their own secrets. "Secrets are dangerous," Poirot observed, "but sometimes revealing them is the only way to find peace." As the moon rose, casting silver light over the gardens, Poirot felt the threads of the case tightening around him. The whispers, the footsteps, the hidden histories, they were all pieces of a larger puzzle, one that involved not just the past, but the present lives of those within Whispering Manor. Returning inside, Poirot retired to his room to write detailed notes. His thoughts were clear. The mystery was far from simple haunting or superstition. It was a carefully orchestrated drama crafted by human hands with motives rooted deep in history and personal grievance. Just as he prepared to extinguish the lamp, a soft knock sounded at the door. It was Eleanor, her face pale and eyes wide with urgency. "Monsieur Poirot," she whispered, "there is something you must see, something I found in the West Wing." Curious and alert, Poirot followed her through the darkened corridors, the house seeming to hold its breath around them. In a forgotten room at the end of the wing, Eleanor pointed to a loose floorboard. "Earlier today, I thought I heard noises here. When I lifted this board, I found a small box." Poirot carefully opened the box. Inside lay a collection of letters and a faded photograph, a woman whose eyes held a haunting sadness. "Isabelle," Poirot murmured. "It appears her story is not yet finished." As they looked at the photograph, a sudden cold draft swept through the room, and for a moment Poirot imagined he heard a faint whisper carried on the wind. "Beware the past," it seemed to say once more. Chapter 5. The Hidden Box. The discovery of the small box beneath the floorboard was, for Poirot, a moment of both triumph and deep reflection. The faded photograph of Isabelle Fairfax, a woman whose eyes seemed to carry the weight of untold sorrow, had awakened something in the manor, a past that refused to remain silent. The morning air was cool and sharp as Poirot and Eleanor sat together in the library, examining the contents of the box more closely. Alongside the photograph were several letters, their edges yellowed and delicate with age. Each was carefully unsealed and read aloud by Eleanor, her voice steady despite the heavy weight of the words. "These letters are addressed to Isabelle," Eleanor said, "but they are signed simply with initials, a B." Poirot nodded thoughtfully. "Monsieur Poirot, do you think AB could be the key to understanding her fate?" "Quite possibly," he replied. "Initials are often used to conceal identity, but they can also reveal connections if one knows where to look. The letters told a story of forbidden love, secrecy, and fear. Isabel had been involved with a man whose social standing made their relationship untenable, a scandal in the eyes of the Fairfax family. The letters were urgent and heartfelt, pleading for discretion and hope. One letter read, "My dearest Isabel, we must be cautious. The walls have ears, and the eyes of the manor watch too closely. I dream of a day when we can be free, but until then we must hide our love from those who would see it destroyed. Yours always," Abbe Poirot's fingers gently brushed the paper. "Love and secrecy often breed conflict, mes amis. It is possible that this hidden romance sowed discord not only between lovers, but within the family itself." Eleanor's eyes darkened. "Uncle always spoke of honor and duty. I wonder what he would have thought of such a liaison." "Many things in life challenge our ideals," Poirot said, "but the truth must always be sought." As they continued to read, Poirot's thoughts returned to Mr. Blake, the gardener. The man's reticence and uneasy glances had not escaped his notice. Poirot decided it was time to learn more about A.B. and any possible connection to the grounds. Later that morning, Poirot found Blake in the tool shed, polishing a set of pruning shears. The gardener glanced up, his expression guarded. "Mr. Blake," Poirot began, "may I ask about your knowledge of the Fairfax family, particularly anyone with the initials A.B.? Blake hesitated, then said quietly, "There was a man named Arthur Bellamy who worked on the estate years ago. He was close to the family, but kept to himself mostly. Do you know if he had any relationship with Isabel Fairfax?" Blake's jaw tightened. "They were friends. Some said more than that, but I never heard details." Arthur left suddenly after Isabel disappeared. Poirot folded his hands. "And do you know why?" Blake shook his head. "No one said. Just that Arthur was heartbroken and gone. Some believed he knew things best left forgotten." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Interesting. Very interesting." The detective resolved to find out more about Arthur Bellamy. He would need to visit the nearby village and inquire discreetly. Meanwhile, back in the manor, the atmosphere was growing more strained. Eleanor confided to Poirot her fears that someone in the household might be actively trying to keep the past hidden, and that this person could be behind the recent disturbances. Poirot did not dismiss her concerns. "Fear and silence are often partners in crime," he said quietly. "But the truth is never truly buried." That evening, Poirot summoned the household to the drawing room once more. His manner was calm but carried an unmistakable firmness. "Mes amis, the discovery of the hidden box has illuminated a part of this mystery, but it has also raised new questions. Isabel Fairfax's secret love affair and the disappearance that followed are central to understanding the tensions here." He looked slowly around the room. "I believe that someone among us knows more than they admit. And until we confront the past openly, the shadows will continue to lengthen." Sir Reginald shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Eleanor's face was pale but resolute. Lydia Carter's eyes were steady, betraying nothing, and James stood silently by the door, his expression inscrutable. Poirot continued, "Tomorrow, I shall visit the village to learn more about Arthur Bellamy and his connection to this house. Until then, I ask that each of you reflect on what you know and consider who might fear the truth the most." The night passed with little sleep for Poirot. The whispering footsteps and mysterious sounds haunted his thoughts, but so too did the emotions underlying the case: love, betrayal, fear, and the heavy burden of secrets kept too long. As dawn broke, Poirot prepared for his journey to the village. He packed a small bag with essentials and the letters from the box, intending to show them to those who might recognize the handwriting or recall Arthur Bellamy's story. Before leaving, he paused in the main hall, his eyes scanning the portraits of the Fairfax ancestors lining the walls. Each face seemed to watch him, silent witnesses to centuries of history, some proud, some tragic. Poirot's lips curved into a small smile. "The past does not rest easy, but neither do I." He stepped out into the morning mist, the manor looming behind him like a fortress of memories and mysteries waiting to be unraveled. Chapter 6. Echoes from the Village. The village of Lower Marston was a small, quiet place, nestled amidst rolling fields and winding country lanes, only a few miles from Whispering Manor. As Poirot's carriage approached the village green, the detective's keen eyes scanned the modest cottages and the familiar bustle of morning chores. It was a world away from the sombre grandeur of the manor, yet it held clues, vital to unravelling the tangled web surrounding Isabel Fairfax's disappearance. Poirot stepped down from the carriage and adjusted his hat. The village had not changed much since his last visit decades ago, yet the air held the same mixture of kindness and caution that small communities often reserved for strangers. He began his inquiries at the village pub, the Red Fox, where the locals gathered to exchange news and gossip. Poirot's presence did not go unnoticed. His precise manner and refined accent marked him as an outsider. Yet his reputation as a detective sometimes preceded him, and whispers of his visit spread quickly. Inside the pub was warm and filled with the rich aroma of peat smoke and wood polish. Poirot approached the bar, where a middle-aged man polished a glass. "Good morning, monsieur," Poirot said politely. "I am seeking information about a man named Arthur Bellamy. Did you know him?" The bartender's face shifted slightly at the name. "Arthur?" "Aye, I knew him well. Worked around these parts years ago, mostly at the Manor Gardens. But he wasn't from here originally. Came from the city, I reckon. Quiet sort, kept to himself mostly." "Do you know anything of his relationship with Isabel Fairfax?" Poirot asked. The bartender glanced around the room before leaning closer. "There was talk, sir. Whispered talk. Arthur and Miss Isabel, they were close." "Too close," some said. "Not proper, according to the old ways." Poirot nodded, encouraging him to continue. "One winter, Isabel vanished without a trace. Arthur left soon after. Some said he was heartbroken. Others suspected he knew more than he let on." "Did Arthur ever speak of his reasons for leaving?" Poirot asked. The bartender shook his head. "No, he never said a word, just packed and disappeared." Poirot's next stop was the village post office, where he hoped to find records or letters that might shed more light on Arthur Bellamy. The postmistress, a sharp-eyed woman named Mrs. Grayson, was initially hesitant, but grew more forthcoming once Poirot mentioned his connection to Whispering Manor. "Arthur Bellamy used to write letters," she said, "mostly to a woman named Isabel. The letters stopped suddenly the year she disappeared. There was a final letter, never sent, found in his belongings. Poirot's interest piqued. "May I see this letter?" Mrs. Grayson retrieved the letter from a small cabinet. The handwriting was neat, but hurried. "My dearest Isabel, I fear the walls are closing in. If anything happens to you, know that I will seek justice. They do not understand what we share. I pray for a day when truth will prevail." Poirot's eyes narrowed. The letter was a cry of desperation and a promise. Next, Poirot visited the village cemetery. Among the old stones and weathered crosses, he sought any trace of Isabel Fairfax or Arthur Bellamy. The caretaker, a stooped old man named Mr. Hargreaves, remembered the story well. "Miss Isabel never was buried here, monsieur. No body was ever found," he said solemnly. "And Arthur, well, they say he died in London some years later, alone and broken." Poirot studied the graves. "Is it possible Arthur returned here at some point?" "Perhaps," Mr. Hargreaves replied. "Sometimes the dead don't rest easy, and the living are haunted by what they leave behind." Poirot's thoughts returned to Whispering Manor, to the shadows that stretched across the estate, and the hidden box discovered beneath the floorboards. The village had confirmed his suspicions. Arthur Bellamy's story was inseparable from Isabel's fate, and both were tied to a secret powerful enough to unsettle the present. Before leaving the village, Poirot sought out a local historian, Miss Clara Bennet, who had devoted her life to preserving the stories of Lower Marston. In her small book-lined study, she showed Poirot a faded diary belonging to Arthur Bellamy, recovered from an old trunk left at the manor after his departure. The diary was a raw and intimate account of Arthur's love for Isabel, but it also revealed his growing fear of the Fairfax family's wrath. "They do not wish our love to be known. I have seen the dark looks, the whispered warnings. If they discover what I know, I fear for both our lives." Miss Bennet looked up as Poirot closed the diary. Arthur was convinced that someone within the Fairfax family wanted to silence Isabel permanently. Poirot's expression was grave. "And yet, no one has been accused, no one punished. The past remains buried, like a stone in the garden." Clara nodded. "But stones can be moved, monsieur." With the diary and new insights in hand, Poirot prepared to return to Whispering Manor. The journey back was quiet, the detective lost in thought. Upon arriving, he was greeted by Sir Reginald, whose usual composure was tinged with anxiety. "Have you learned anything, Monsieur Poirot?" the baronet asked. "Indeed, Sir Reginald. Arthur Bellamy's story is both tragic and illuminating. His love for Isabel was genuine, but it threatened powerful interests." Sir Reginald's eyes darkened. "You imply that someone in my family might have wished them harm?" "Not an implication, but a strong possibility," Poirot replied gently. "Secrets of the heart often intertwine with secrets of power." Later that evening, Poirot gathered the household in the drawing room once more. His tone was measured, his gaze penetrating. "The past is not a closed book," he said. "Arthur Bellamy's diary and letters reveal a story of love, fear, and threat. Someone in this house feared the truth and sought to keep it hidden." He looked directly at Sir Reginald. "I ask you all, is there anyone here who wishes to come forward, to speak of what has been hidden too long?" A heavy silence followed. Eleanor's eyes met Poirot's, shining with a mixture of hope and fear. Lydia remained composed while James's face was unreadable. Poirot smiled faintly. "We are closer to the truth than before. But the final pieces remain to be found." As the fire crackled softly, Poirot felt the familiar thrill of the hunt, the dance of logic and intuition that would soon lead him to the heart of the mystery. The shadows of the past were growing longer, but the light of revelation was dawning. Chapter 7. The Unseen Hand. The atmosphere at Whispering Manor grew heavier with each passing day, as if the walls themselves bore the weight of unspoken truths. The revelations from the village and the discovery of Arthur Bellamy's diary had shifted the balance in the household. Suspicion lingered like a fog, settling quietly over every glance and every whispered word. Poirot, ever the picture of composed elegance, watched carefully. His sharp eyes missed nothing, the slight hesitation before a reply, the restless tapping of a foot, the momentary flicker of an expression barely concealed. This morning, he decided, was the moment to test the waters, to observe the reactions of the household when confronted with certain facts. Gathering the key members once more in the drawing room, Poirot arranged the letters and diary excerpts on the polished mahogany table. The gaslight flickered, casting dancing shadows as he began to speak. "Mes amis, we have uncovered the love story of Isabel Fairfax and Arthur Bellamy, a love forbidden and feared by some, but I ask you to consider who would benefit from keeping such a secret." Sir Reginald's jaw tightened, Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line, Lydia maintained her usual calm, and James stood with his hands clasped behind his back. Poirot's gaze turned slowly from one to another. "The past is not merely a memory, it is an active force, influencing the present. Someone here has gone to great lengths to ensure the past remains buried." A soft cough interrupted the room. Poirot's eyes snapped toward James, the ever-watchful butler. "James, you have served this household for many years," Poirot said quietly. "You know more than most of the family's private affairs. What can you tell us of the tensions surrounding Isabel's disappearance?" James bowed his head slightly. "Monsieur Poirot, I have seen many things, but I am a man of discretion. My loyalty is to the family." "And yet, loyalty need not be blindness," Poirot said. "Sometimes it is the greatest loyalty to speak the truth." James hesitated, then spoke with measured words. "There were arguments, monsieur. Heated discussions about Isabel's relationship with Arthur. Sir Reginald was furious, believing it a threat to the family's reputation." "Was anyone else involved?" Poirot pressed. James nodded. "Lady Fairfax, Sir Reginald's mother, was most adamant that the matter be silenced. She feared scandal above all else." Poirot folded his hands. "And what of Lady Fairfax now? Is she still with us?" "Lady Fairfax passed many years ago, monsieur," James said quietly. "But her influence lingers." Poirot's mind whirred. The fear of scandal, the pressure of family honor, motives potent enough to inspire desperate acts. Turning to Lydia Carter, Poirot asked, "Miss Carter, you have observed the household with keen eyes. Have you noticed anything unusual in recent days?" Lydia's gaze was steady. "I have noticed tension, Monsieur Poirot, and I have seen that some here guard secrets with great care." Poirot smiled faintly. "Indeed, secrets are the currency of this house." At that moment, Eleanor entered the room with a letter in her hand. Her face was flushed with urgency. "Monsieur Poirot, I found this among my uncle's papers. It's a letter addressed to Arthur Bellamy, but the handwriting is unfamiliar." Poirot took the letter and examined it under the light. The script was neat and deliberate, signed simply A.F., Sir Reginald Fairfax. Poirot murmured. Could it be? Sir Reginald paled but did not deny it. The letter was stern and commanding, warning Arthur to end his relationship with Isabel immediately or face consequences. Poirot placed the letter carefully on the table. Here is evidence of direct interference. Someone with authority tried to sever this love, with threats implied. Sir Reginald's voice was low. It was a mistake. I believed I was protecting the family. Sometimes protection is a mask for control, Poirot said softly. Suddenly a loud crash echoed from the hallway, startling the assembled group. They rushed out to find the vase from the hall table, shattered on the floor. Nearby, a faint footprint in the dust caught Poirot's attention. Kneeling, he examined the print. It was small, delicate, and unmistakably feminine. Someone wishes to frighten us, Poirot said, or to send a message. Eleanor's eyes widened. But who and why? Poirot's gaze swept the room. Fear is a weapon, and the wielder is always close. As the evening drew on, Poirot requested to speak privately with Lydia Carter. In the quiet of the library, he shared his thoughts. Miss Carter, I suspect there is more to your presence here than mere duty. You seem to hold knowledge that others do not. Lydia hesitated, then nodded. Monsieur Poirot, I came here to protect the family legacy. I have seen the damage secrets can cause. And have you discovered who might be responsible for recent disturbances? I believe so, she said quietly. But revealing it could shatter everything. Poirot smiled gently. Sometimes the greatest courage lies in facing the truth. Returning to the main hall, Poirot was met by Sir Reginald, who had overheard part of their conversation. Monsieur Poirot, if you have suspicions, I implore you to act. This house cannot bear more unrest. Poirot's eyes twinkled. Patience, Sir Reginald. The game is far from over. That night, as the household settled under the watchful eyes of Portrait's long silent, Poirot retired to his study. There he reviewed his notes, letters, and the diary. A pattern began to emerge, one of jealousy, power, and betrayal. He understood now that the haunting footsteps, the whispered warnings, and the subtle threats were not the work of a restless spirit, but of a living person, the unseen hand manipulating events from the shadows. With a final sip of his coffee, Poirot prepared for the confrontation that would bring the truth into the light. Chapter 8. The Grand Reveal. The drawing room at Whispering Manor was dimly lit, the flicker of the fire casting long shadows upon the assembled faces. Tonight was the night Hercule Poirot would lay bare the tangled truth behind Isabel Fairfax's disappearance and the disturbances that had haunted the household for weeks. The tension was palpable. Sir Reginald stood stiffly by the window, Eleanor near the hearth, her eyes bright with anticipation, Lydia Carter poised quietly in a corner, and James the butler keeping his usual composed silence. Poirot himself appeared as calm and refined as ever, his little grey cells evidently hard at work. "Mes amis," Poirot began, folding his hands with elegance. "Thank you for gathering once more. The time has come to shed light upon the shadows that have troubled this house and reveal the truth, long hidden beneath layers of silence and fear." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. Let us begin with Isabel Fairfax, whose disappearance set this chain of events into motion. From the letters, the hidden box, and Arthur Bellamy's diary, we learned of a forbidden love, a love that threatened the very foundation of the Fairfax family's reputation. Poirot's gaze swept across the room. But love alone does not vanish without cause. Someone sought to silence Isabel, to erase that love from history. He turned to Sir Reginald. "You confess to sending the threatening letter signed A.F. to Arthur Bellamy. You wish to protect the family's honour." Sir Reginald nodded, the weight of regret evident. "I did what I thought was necessary. I did not foresee the consequences." "Nor did anyone, until it was too late," Poirot said softly. "But," Poirot continued, "there is more. The letter did not cause Isabel's disappearance. There was a darker hand at work." He looked toward Lydia Carter. "Miss Carter, you arrived at Whispering Manor under the guise of a companion. Yet your true purpose was to guard a secret long kept from prying eyes." Lydia's expression remained serene. "Yes, Monsieur Poirot, I am the granddaughter of Lady Fairfax, a secret born from a forbidden union. My presence here was to protect that secret, but not to harm." Poirot inclined his head. "An important truth indeed, yet it does not explain the recent disturbances, the broken vase, the threatening footprints." He then fixed his gaze on James, the butler, whose steady composure began to show cracks. "James, you have served this family faithfully, but you have also witnessed tensions that have festered for years. Tell us, did you act to protect or to punish?" James swallowed and met Poirot's eyes. Monsieur, I sought only to preserve the family's dignity. When the secrets threatened to surface, I tried to frighten those who might expose the truth prematurely. Poirot nodded. A misguided attempt to control fate. He turned back to the others. Now consider Arthur Bellamy. He left the Manor broken-hearted, but he did not simply vanish. His death in London was not the end of his story. Poirot produced a small envelope, which he handed to Eleanor. This was found recently in an old trunk in the attic. A letter from Arthur to Isabel, written shortly before his death. Eleanor opened it, her voice trembling, as she read aloud. "My beloved Isabel, the truth must come to light no matter the cost. I have hidden proof of Lady Fairfax's involvement in your disappearance. I pray someone will find this and bring justice." Poirot looked around. Lady Fairfax, the matriarch, was more than just a guardian of family honour. She orchestrated the concealment of Isabel's fate. Sir Reginald's face paled. "My mother?" "Yes," Poirot said gently. "She feared scandal so deeply that she arranged for Isabel to be hidden away, alive but imprisoned, in a secluded wing of the manor. Isabel's disappearance was a secret imprisonment, not a vanishing." Gasps filled the room. Poirot continued. "The sounds, the footsteps you heard, Isabel herself, kept hidden, surviving all these years." Eleanor rushed from the room and moments later returned with a frail figure, a woman with silver hair and bright, sharp eyes. It was Isabel Fairfax herself. The room was silent as she spoke softly. "I was kept away to protect the family's name, but I longed for freedom." Poirot smiled. "And the disturbances? The broken vase? The footprints?" James stepped forward. "I wished to keep the secret safe, to prevent ruin. I thought fear would keep peace." "But peace built on lies is fragile," Poirot said. "And the truth always finds a way." Sir Reginald turned to his sister. "Eleanor, you never gave up hope. You sought the truth where others would not." Eleanor nodded. "I owed it to Isabel, and to our family." Poirot looked at them all. This mystery was not merely about a missing woman. It was about love, loyalty, fear, and the cost of silence. He clasped his hands. "The shadows have been lifted, thanks to your courage and to the little grey cells." As the firelight danced, the family embraced, reconciled with their past and hopeful for the future. Poirot's eyes twinkled as he mused quietly. And so justice is served, not by harsh punishment but by truth, revealed with patience and kindness. The case of Whispering Manor was closed, leaving behind a story of human frailty and strength forever etched in the quiet corners of the estate.